Hello and welcome to the Creative Consciousness Radio Show on Blog Talk Radio. We are your hosts, Sam and Cabrini Greco, coming to you live from beautiful planet Earth. Throughout our conversation, we will be covering topics such as spirituality, global consciousness, metaphysics, and where you think we're truly headed. We have a great show to share with you today, so bookmark us and receive reminders. And you can visit our website at alltruenatural.com.
My name is Cabrini.
Hi, I'm Sam, your co-host for this evening.
And we have a great show coming your way on December 11th, 2014. We have a special guest going to be on our show this evening from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And his name is Justin Teeuwen. And maybe, Salvatore, you can share a little bit about Justin and how we know Justin.
Oh, hey, hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I met Justin a few years ago. During his school years at the university, he stayed at my parents' house. They had a duplex, and so he was renting out the other side, as well as my nephew and a lot of other students, and it was a great time. And the times I used to visit, I would run into Justin, and we would literally, philosophize right on the spot. So, and this was while he was, in his early 20s, also, and I commend him for opening up in that early time in his life. So, yeah, that's how we met, and I just ran into his profile on Facebook, and I kind of connected and put the dots together and asked him to be on the show. I had a good feeling about asking him to be on the show. He answered excitingly, and it was here we are connected. So I'm just going to give an introduction here to what Justin is, basically a briefing of what he's about. He resides in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and is the owner and operator of Time Consulting Incorporated. Justin has a Master in Science and Physics and a Bachelor's of Education. So Justin shares, it began as a vision to provide motivational enthusiasm, energy, and wisdom to both professional communities as well as personal individuals. Helping others achieve their dreams is the passion of Time Consulting Incorporated. So he's got a service called Time Consulting Incorporated, and what it is, it's kind of like life coaching. And it kind of changes people's perception on certain things and has them achieve their goals in various parts of their life. So I was asking Justin the other night on the phone, how spiritual is it for him? And he said it's a very spiritual path that he's on. He's very connected that way.
And, isn't it true also, Sam, that Justin recently came out with a book? He's a new author. He's got a book out. I believe the name of the book is It's About Time, which I think is just a wonderful name for someone who is has his master's in physics. And I think that's going to be, that's one of the questions I want to talk about ask him is, how did you come up with the name of your book? It's About Time.
We'll have to remember that question. Yeah, he's been researching, developing, and practicing, as a life coach for the past 10 years. He studied from the experts in the field. He's compiled and created a simple, easy to follow process to achieve, people's deepest passions. He is currently completing his first book. Here it is. It's About Time. So,
and I think
absolutely.
that book has been published since that web.
He's a great guy. He's got a great personality, very positive outlook in life. He always has that energy. And
bubbling
so
with
we're going to be having him on the show pretty soon. Go ahead, Brini.
I said bubbling with enthusiasm.
Absolutely. I'm sure he is. He's, like I was saying, he's a great personality. And we'll be having him on the show in about 5 or 10 minutes.
While we take a short break, please take a moment and bookmark our Creative Consciousness radio show here on Blog Talk Radio. If you're living a spiritually purposed life and want to connect and co-create with others in the spiritual community at large, become a member of All True Natural Cooperative. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter, and for more information, visit our website at alltruenatural.com. Promoting awareness as a key to harmonious living.
All right, welcome back to the show. We have Justin on the phone, and we're just going to fire it off and welcome Justin here to the show. Welcome, Justin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you both?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Yeah, we're great. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Justin. We're very excited to have you here as a guest of ours.
Yeah, I'm very excited for where our conversation today will lend us.
Yeah, that's great. So, Justin, can you just give us a little bio of yourself before we just get into it?
Sure. So, to give our listeners a little bit of a story of who I am and how I came to be, my name is Justin Teeuwen, and I was born and raised in a little town called Chatham in Ontario, Canada. I was the second youngest of a family of 7, with my parents there, and I began my life as a student growing up. I really took to science. That was my passion growing up. I loved everything to do with science. I was a real geek about it. It was awesome, and I pursued physics and eventually graduated with a Master of Science, all from the University of Windsor. I did finish that in 2010. It was while I was pursuing physics and science, actually, that I developed a deep spiritual longing for completion. I think as a young man growing up, I really was searching for that. What's my place and what will my contribution be? And so, kind of in tandem with my pursuit of physics and my recreational time, I spent a lot of time reading different spiritual works and practicing my own ideas and my own thoughts and developing my own sense of faith and where that came from. After building and operating my own business for nearly 2 years, I realized that my passion for giving to the world had started off as just a dream, really, which was to help people achieve their dreams, very simply. And I realized one of the best ways I could do that was to pursue a career as an educator, as a teacher. So I pursued a Bachelor of Education and completed that in 2012. It was actually following that I served as a teacher. I've taught in Europe, Asia, Africa, and here in North America. While I was teaching, I actually got my first chance to do motivational speaking, which is how I shifted into what I'm doing now. And it's a bit of an interesting story. Sometimes the universe, I believe, speaks to you in omens and signs, and other times it just kind of hits you all at once. Well, a friend, a colleague actually, had asked me to come and speak at a college, and I obliged. I said, sure, no problem. What do you want me to speak on? We put together a list of topics, and I thought I was speaking to a room full of college students, and being only 27 at the time, I thought I could handle that. Well, the day before, I'm confirming the whole event, and I suddenly realized, well, as they told me, it was not a bunch of college students. It was a bunch of college professors. And so as I'm preparing my notes, I don't have much time left to change the course. I said, well, hopefully they can benefit from what I had. And so I went and delivered a 1-hour seminar on, a process of pursuing your dreams in life and how best to work as a team. That was one of the major issues that they wanted me to speak on, was teamwork. So I spoke on that. And when I completed, I was really humbled. The audience that was there, they were all older than me and, all very well educated, masters, doctorates, around the room. But I was very humbled to find out that they received my message as well, and some of them said they'd heard things they'd never learned before. So I found that really miraculous that I was able to share with them some insights. And right at that moment, I nearly quit teaching full-time. I was debating it. It was a real crisis of conscience, I call it. But I decided to complete my work as a teacher that year and my commitment. And then following that, I opened Time Consulting, which is my business, focused on motivational speaking. And TIME is actually the acronym for the process of pursuing your dreams. And what TIME represents is to transform your life by I, illuminating your path, M represents manifesting, and the E represents evolving into the new you, the you that you wish to be. And that process came through in putting together my first book, which is called It's About Time, which is available on my site. And I'll talk more about that probably later. But the short end of it is I ended up on this very circuitous route, pursuing science for a while. And while I was pursuing science, I was also delving into art and creative expression. And then the two crossed over and became one. And I realized they weren't as distinct as I once thought they were. And it was while they were merging that this expression towards motivational speaking and sharing a message of positivity, encouraging others to, take action and pursue what they really wanted in their lives, that it all sort of came together into how I am here now with you.
Wow, that is very impressive. What a story. Fascinating.
Yeah, that's the Cliff Notes version.
Well, that's great, Justin. We commend you for listening to yourself and asking the questions, having the courage to listen to yourself, and making that commitment to community, to humanity. I mean, hats off to you, brother. That's a great thing. We're honored to have you on the show too.
Thank you. I thought for today's show, I've given a listen to some of your previous shows, and I thought for the viewers, it would be great to have a discussion about a topic that we all can relate to involving our spiritual journey. And so I thought to kind of frame the discussion, we would talk about the idea of truth and its various components. What is truth and truth with a capital T, I mean. What is that compared to just truth with a not capital, regular T? And I thought we would pursue that line of discussion, and I prepared a few notes to share with viewers as well. And then, depending on how the discussion goes, we can certainly welcome questions and comments from the viewers as well.
Absolutely. For those of you who are listening, the phone number is area code 267-521-0151. You can also call in if you're having issues listening to it on your computer. Call in and just listen via telephone. So, Justin, go right ahead. Let's have it. Let's have the truth.
Yeah. I'll start with one of my favorite spiritual guides, I guess you could say, Mahatma Gandhi, or as his proper name, Mohandas Gandhi. He had this remarkable quote, which how Gandhi described truth was in this way. He said, "An ultimate truth exists, but that no one person shall ever know it fully." So I'll kind of repeat that there is an ultimate truth. And for Gandhi, actually, truth was God. He attributed truth and God being the same thing, that if you know God, then you know the truth, and if you know truth, then you know God. And actually his whole movement, which was called Satyagraha, is based on truth. Satyagraha is a word that he made. It's a combination of two words in Hindi, and what it means is firmness in truth. Firmness in truth. And with firmness in truth, what he basically meant is we're going to stand firm in what we know to be true, which in their case was their dignity as persons, to stand up for their rights, and to do so in a nonviolent way. Those were all key components to his movement, but it all had to do with a deep spiritual belief that there was this ultimate truth out there that you can embrace and be one with, and in being one with that truth, you can express it. You can express that truth with others, and that's sort of the beginning of where I thought we would start from, is discussing, what we mean by truth when we're talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we were having a conversation. I actually had an opportunity to do a spiritual reading today, and the woman that I worked with expressed to me that she was getting visions of Christ. And in the conversation, I explained to her that my understanding of Christ, as you were just, sharing so eloquently, is truth. And the definition for Christ for me is truth. So I really, really kind of agree with you. I'm really in alignment with what you're saying when you talk about a universal truth that each one of us can tap into and get our part of that truth from the whole. And that truth can be whole to each every one of us.
That's
even
right.
though we're only significantly parts in wholeness.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Justin? The collective consciousness, the universal spirit, the universal understanding of what truth is. You know, there seems to be a commonality amongst many cultures that say, there is a universal understanding amongst cultures that there's an agreement of what truth is. It does represent some of the qualities that you were talking about.
I wish you could see my notes, because it's almost like you're reading my screen. But I'll lay out for you, I've kind of broken this discussion into three distinct areas that can lead us to what you're exactly talking about. The first one is a discussion on, how truth affects us. When we believe something, what happens? The second question, by the way, one of the keys I find to truth is exploring through questions. So I have sort of three questions. How are we affected by truth was the first one. The second is, how do we discover universal truths? So the first one is our impact. How does truth impact us? The second is, how do we discover universal truths? And then the last one, and you were touching on it right there, what are these universal truths that kind of transcend everything that we're discussing? So if I may, I'm gonna come back to your question, but I'm going to start with a bit of a seemingly unrelated idea. You mentioned in your discussion, you said you observe Christ as truth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so for you, when you observe that and you believe it, it becomes true for you. That is truth for you. And there are many who believe that, but there are many who believe in slight variations of that as well. Everyone's relationship with Christ is a little different from person to person. And why I smiled and said, I wish you could see my screen, is I actually was reading, as a part of my youth growing up, I discovered this science fiction book that helped me with a metaphor. So let's take a little moment to imagine something. Imagine that there's this diamond, okay, and it has 10 different faces, and each face is distinct. And no two faces are alike. And at each of the face of the diamond are 10 different people. Each person is observing the diamond. Now, if they were all to get together and discuss the diamond, they would all describe something a little different because they're all seeing a different face. And yet, they would say, I see the truth. I've seen it. This is what I'm observing. And this is what, and they describe it. It has 3 sides, 4 sides, 8 sides, however many that particular face has. Their descriptions and their accounts may be quite different, especially people say on opposite sides of the same diamond. And yet they're describing the same shape. So the way I take truth is, imagine now, instead of 10 people observing 10 faces of a diamond, we have 7 billion people observing a 7 billion faced object. And each of us has a different window or view into the common center, that common whole. And so each of us can experience the divine, each of us can experience truth, and we might think between each other we're describing something different, and yet we might be actually talking about the same thing.
Wow, that's very profound. I love your viewpoint. I love the view. And it really fits.
What's very powerful about this idea is it's flexible to each person having a different view, each person having a slight different variation. No two Christians, for example, think the same thing, nor do two people of any faith think the exact same thing. Everyone has a different relationship with their faith and a different relationship with whomever they call God, whatever name they call God. They have a slightly different relationship with it. But what I'm drawing back to in that first point is we are a product of our own truth. So if you believe, for example, as I do, that God is a relational God, that it is more about how we connect with each other and about the relationship between each other, and not just you and I, but everyone and everything and not just things, but energy and beyond, when you look at it as a connection in a relationship, that's one perspective. Others look at it a little differently. But no matter how we're observing these truths, if I believe it, that becomes my reality. And there are different examples that demonstrate this. Everything from, for example, in medicine, the placebo effect, where people are provided a medication that has actually no medication in it, just a sugar pill. They take this medication and they suddenly realize that they're getting better, simply because they have an act of faith. An act of faith in terms of believing that the doctor has provided them with medication that will make them well. The same thing can happen if they believe that they're not going to get better. Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, he describes what he calls logotherapy, the therapy of meaning, and helping people find meaning in their lives. And he was working with people who had given up on their belief in life. And there is a very fast track towards sadness and depression and a lot of the things that we find very, very destructive when you believe that you're going to end, when you believe that it's over. There are other examples. For example, when people pray, when they're praying, they're sending out a manifestation into the universe, into God, or whatever term you call it. They're sending out that energy that is attracting that idea. So when they say, I wish health and wellness upon this particular individual, and they believe that will happen, suddenly we see a miracle. And we say, it happened. But I believe that this world was constructed with mechanisms for us to conduct whatever miracles we want. We can actually create the miracles that we want by simply believing that they can happen, truly believing them. If we just casually say, I think this is going to happen, that's a bit different than if we actually say, I believe that if I go left, this will happen. If I go right, that will happen. And we make that, and then it becomes our reality. So no matter what we believe, we're actually a product of our truth. And so it's very important to then realize, if I am a product of whatever I believe, what do I believe? Because then what you believe becomes your world.
Absolutely. So what I'm getting, I've got two things, and that is, one is the power of belief, and the manifestation. Here we are with how the mind, and how when the heart and mind connect in a certain way through belief, the physical reality becomes manipulated, and things manifest. And the other thing that I got also is the acknowledgement of everybody's unique signature, unique spiritual signature, and how they believe and what they believe in that common universal belief, but with their own signature. Every individual has so much to contribute to what their belief is in this universal thing that we're talking about. So I got those two aspects. One is how belief can change reality, and and also the acknowledgement of everyone's uniqueness, unique spiritual signature.
I was recently, my mom actually shared with me a really fun quote that really encapsulates this idea, and it goes like this: thought resonates matter. Thought
absolutely
resonates matter, and the word resonate is really, really special to me. It's actually a scientific concept, and I want to talk for a moment, if I can, about the power of resonance, because we use it in everyday conversation. We say, I really resonate with you, meaning we get along really well. But in a scientific sense, what resonance means is an exchange of energy between two objects if they have related frequencies. So a practical experience is a tuning fork. If you bang a tuning fork, it makes a certain sound of a specific pitch. If you bring it near a string that is tuned to that tuning fork, it will absorb the sound energy without any physical contact. It will just absorb the sound energy and start singing with it. And what's neat is the two feed each other as they're both vibrating and making their sounds, they feed each other. And in a similar way, people who are on the same, we say, oh, we're on the same wavelength. That's one of the expressions we have. We're on the same wavelength. What we mean by that is we're exchanging energy. And so I like that when you described it as spiritual signature, that's a remarkable description of it, because when we are on the same spiritual wavelengths, when we have, the closer we get to spiritual signatures, the closer we have to resonance. And so we can actually feed each other spiritually in that way. But it goes beyond that. Resonance is an exchange. It's not just one way. So when we say thought resonates matter, it also means matter resonates thought. So I'll give you an example. Have you had it where you're sitting in a room and there's someone who's just having a bad day and you can feel it?
Sure.
Yeah. You can just feel it. You're walking in, it's like there's a draft. Sure. You just sense it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a bit of our spiritual consciousness coming about. We were programmed with it before we even had language. We had a sense of each other. We had a sense of how the other was feeling. And the same thing happens if you have positive energy. Like we're, hundreds or thousands of miles apart right now, yet I can feel that there's an exchange of energy across that distance.
Yes.
So it's not limited by space or time per se. It's more of when we are together, we can exchange thought and energy, and so can the objects around us. So it's very important then to keep mind of what you keep around you, because that affects you. And so too, how you think about it affects what it is.
That's quite profound, and that's true. As we speak on the concept of truth, you can even back it up even with your science and your quantum studies also. I mean, it's all there. And so you know what I think, Justin, what kind of blows me away is a lot of people are talking this talk and realizing this. It may not be as practical to some as others in the creative consciousness, but the amazing thing for me personally is how many people now at least are aware of this.
Exactly. And I think what really needs to happen, it has to do with how, where I think of it is what's next. What's next for us as a culture, as a people, as a race? What's next for us? And the thing that I ponder, where I come from on this, has to do with a bit of history, actually. In the West, a lot of our philosophy is based on Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. And Platonic philosophy is very rooted in the mind. I can think my way through a situation. I can think my way out. I can use my mind to overcome my reality. And what I am encouraging at this stage is that thinking about our connection and recognizing it, the next step is an action. There's this really great quote. It's actually, I think it's Frank Outlaw. He's the first one that I found that published it. And you've probably heard it before. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. The next sort of leap from this recognition of a connectedness between all things is then action. What can we do to be more connected to each other? What can we do to be more connected to our environment, to our earth, to our ecosystem, to our universe? How can we be more connected to each other?
Justin, do you think it starts? I'm sorry, I have to interject here with a question. Do you think that starts with the individuals? Do you think that starts with the individual's curiosity of oneself?
That's a great question.
I have another question from in the chat room, but if you basically, I asked that same question, brother. I asked the same question: what is next? What do we do next? And I think part of, here it is again, my faith is that in nature, as there's also an evolving nature that's happening even in our consciousness, I think those the what's next will be taken care of. But I think right now is at a point where I think it has to start with the person itself, the individual themselves, having that curiosity and following through of their own selves, of who they really are. And so in that journey, here we go. We start establishing our spiritual signatures. You have yours, I have mine, and I think it started off with this curiosity: who am I? What's my purpose? Et cetera, et cetera. I have a question here from the chat room. Are you willing? Do you want to hear the question?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Okay, truth is likely. I'm sorry. Just to clarify, is there a common truth, or does it vary from individual to individual? Is truth felt in the resonance in the heart? Is there a common truth, or does it vary from individual to individual?
I think that's an excellent question to segue into the second part. So we discussed how you're a product of your truth, which is that doesn't leave you very fulfilled when you think, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks this way. When we reach that point, the next thing we say is there's got to be something bigger than just me. There's got to be that universal truth, with the common truth, as the viewer questioned it. So I would say that there are universal truths. Just like when we're looking into that face of the diamond, we're all describing something a little different. But to me, the universal truths are the ones that when you look at people who are in extraordinarily different perspectives, but have the same fundamental truths that come out, then those must be universal. To me, if you can find a universal truth that transcends across fields, across disciplines, like the idea of resonance and connectedness. I'll give you an example. It's called quantum entanglement. If you take two atoms and that are connected to each other naturally, and you move them apart, one atom spins up, the other one spins down. They move them far enough apart that there's no way for them to interact with each other. They measure every spectrum that we know of between the two atoms. And then they take one of the atoms, and using magnets, they flip it. They turn it upside down. The other atom instantly flips with it. This idea of quantum entanglement is really exciting because it shows that even on a subatomic level, we are connected to each other. In fact, everything is distinctly connected. So there are definitely common truths. That's one of them. That is one of the universal truths. No matter what faith background you come from, or where you've been, or even people who may profess that they're atheists, we can all acknowledge that there is a connectedness, not just between people, but between things, the energy around us, and each other.
Absolutely.
I think a real natural question then is, if there are universal truths, how do you discover them? How do you determine, is this a universal truth, or is this just my perspective on it? Because I think what we're all...
Let's have it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's certainly a discussion. So I can share with you as a starting point, and then we can kind of go from there.
So how do we access this universal truth?
I think when it comes to universal truth, it's interesting. If you look in religions, for example, I was raised Catholic, and it's remarkable on the page, like academically, there are doctrines that every religion professes. And I haven't read every religion in the world, but most of the ones that I've read so far say the same idea. At the top, the highest level of knowledge, true knowledge, comes from meditation, from prayer, from consultation within, and connecting yourself to God, the higher power, by whatever name you call it. And when you connect with it, you get this overwhelming faith, this overwhelming knowledge that it's true. That's the highest level. You know it to be true after deep prayer and meditation. But there are other ways. We consult with experts. We consult with friends, family, colleagues. And unfortunately, sometimes in corresponding with colleagues and each other, let's say we find 1 million people who all agree that the sky is green. Okay, and they all believe that the sky is green. Does that make the sky green? Well, no. The sky would still be of whatever wavelength of light it is. That makes it blue. So that's where we then move to the next level, not just knowing between each other. We then could, for example, utilize our minds and our scientific instruments. But when we get beyond that, what if something doesn't make sense? Like when I mentioned that quantum entanglement, there is no answer to why things are connected. As I was once told by a professor, science doesn't answer the why. Science answers the how. The why comes from philosophy or religion. That's where the why comes from. So when we're looking for universal truths, I find for myself, a universal truth pervades all things. You see it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the idea of connectedness, you can. I first was brought about to this when I started practicing yoga. I was practicing yoga, and the goal of yoga is to connect mind and body, and in so doing, bridge the gap between body and spirit, because mind and spirit are somewhat more easily connected. But if you can connect your body to your spiritual connection, which is sort of the overall purpose, I think, originally of yoga, was to connect the body to your spiritual connection. If you can bridge that gap and start building those connections, if you want to think of it in terms of the brain, the neural pathways between different elements of your mind, similarly between different spiritual signatures, if you can build those connections between people, that connectedness pervades, you see it in Eastern philosophies and in Eastern religions. Confucius actually writes about being connected to each other. The Buddha spoke about it. In the Vedas, which is the one of the primary texts for the Hindu faith, they talk about it, and Jesus himself talked about it. So whether we're looking east or west, or even I've recently been exploring and researching people who practice other faiths like Wicca, or they develop their own faiths, and the idea of connectedness is in all of them. So if it's in all the religions, if all of them say that, and even in philosophy and in science, if all of the fields and subjects that we talk about show a connectedness, then connectedness must be a universal truth. Because why would it be in everything if it wasn't?
Right.
This is my own. That's my own sort of extra level. When you get beyond science, when science no longer can explain something, when each other and our experts and our own knowledge can no longer explain something, and you're left with only your faith. For me, what reinforces that faith is the evidence shown to me in every moment of my life. When I see that from this moment to the next moment, there is this intense connectedness that brings us all together.
Yes.
So that sort of answers the second point. What were your thoughts on that? The idea of the process of discovering universal truths.
Well, the process of discovering universal truth is unique to the individual. We found as we did our travels and in our own experiences is that as we take on our own journeys, our own spiritual journeys, if you want to call it that. Some people take on a journey that makes them have spiritual experiences and not even call it that. But when we take on these journeys, we found that everybody is in their own pace, and everybody is using, the language in their mind is exclusive and unique to the individual. And so in those processes, that's what amazes me in those processes too. And when I have when that view comes to me, and when I think of all the people that we know and that we've come across that are taking on their own spiritual journeys in their life, what sticks out is that they're at their own pace. The language that's being used in their heart and in their minds is exclusive and unique to them, and when they express it, it's new. So one thing about the journey is I want to share with you is that it never really plateaus. I mean, it's just what you're contributing tonight enriches my spiritual experience. And all you're doing is just talking, so there's resonance there with with what's going on. So my take on that is basically to see that that uniqueness in the individual and how they take on their spiritual journey. and it is. Everyone is exclusive in expressing it, and that's where it comes. That's where everything. That's where when the expression comes out of the person, it's new to the viewer or to the listener, and it's right in that moment, and it's fresh and it's brand new. So yeah,
there's a remarkable book that I read which talks about. It's called Have a Little Faith, and what the book is about is the author of Tuesdays with Morrie, whose name is escaping me at the moment. It's the same author, and in his book he's interacting with a Jewish rabbi. The author himself was raised Jewish, and also a Christian minister. And the Jewish rabbi had this really great story. I guess it's very short. He said when children are born, their fists are closed because at first they try to hold on to the world. But as an individual grows, they open their hand, and when they die, their hand is open because they've learned to let go.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a very powerful little story, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of another common truth that pervades all backgrounds, and that is essentially the release of the ego. Being self-identified with a particular idea. And I love when you mention, it doesn't plateau. The exploration of truth is best fulfilled with a question, not an answer.
Right.
And I remember when I was having a crisis of faith myself, and I was actually working at a job, and I was fired from that job. And I thought that this job was exactly where I was supposed to be, exactly when I was supposed to be, and I got very confused because I suddenly was no longer in that job. And so I went to a priest actually at the time and consulted with him. And that's actually where I start off my book. When I'm talking, I talk about the day when I was at my lowest, because that same day the house I'd been living in had been broken into, and I also broke up with a significant relationship at that time. So I was pretty down. And yet, for me, I'm like, I got to connect with the universe itself, or God, or I got to connect. So I went to a priest. It was the only thing I knew to do at the time, and that was what worked for me. I went to him, and it's funny, in my interaction with him, I remember a quote that he said to me. He said, "The older I get, the more I find that life is more about questions than it is about answers. And if you can ask the right question, the process of exploring the answer will be more valuable than the answer itself."
Yeah. Wow.
And so I like that you described it as a journey, and it's a journey that doesn't end. The moment you have determined, yes, I've reached it, I'm enlightened. To me, the moment you've defined your enlightenment, your truth, when we talk about universal truth, I believe one of the universal truths is that it's not knowable and not definable distinctly.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that truth is not about getting an answer as much as it is about exploring and searching for one. The deeper that you dive into a question, the greater the results that you get from it. But I remember one of my favorite authors, Paulo Coelho, he said, the moment you've defined your answer is the moment you've stopped asking the right questions. You're missing the mark, if you will. The whole purpose of a question is... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, and that particular exploration stops. Mm-hmm. When you find the answer, the exploration stops.
Yeah, and I think life as an exploration, as an unraveling, or as a winding path that we discover who we are. You mentioned it right at the beginning. Who am I? What is my purpose? Those become the first questions that we ask ourselves, that children ask themselves. Who am I? What is my purpose? What am I here for? We require that fulfillment because we see ourselves as distinct. And one of the answers to that, if you want to call it an answer, it's not much of one, but it also is very profound. I summarize it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. But he's not the only author. Many authors have contributed a similar answer. He said, our purpose in life is to be our best self. Who that best self is varies from moment to moment and individual to individual. So it never stops. It's not like, oh yeah, I've achieved it. I'm my best self today. So it's not something you achieve in the future sense. It's something that you live in the present.
Yeah, the present moment is something we talk about a lot, and I think when we live in the present moment, I say this often also, and it happens with artists and musicians and artists, and or athletes or even scientists. When you get into that zone, they call it the zone, but and this is where the concept of time and space collapse, because I know when I do a painting, I will go through several hours, and it seems like a second has just passed by, and and within that experience that we call it, Cabrini and I happen to call it experiencing infinity, the truth of what we really are. So yeah, absolutely, I totally agree with what you were saying.
The remarkable thing about how time can pass both slow and quick is the more you pay attention to the moment, the more infinite the moment becomes.
Absolutely.
So when you're experiencing pain, for example, and you focus on the pain, suddenly it's like it lasts forever. Where if you defocus from it, it's like it lasted. If your focus is on something completely else, suddenly the passage of time is extraordinarily quick. And it's an interesting inverse relationship. The more I focus on it, the less quickly it passes. And that can be for good or bad. When someone's in love and they're deeply in love with someone or something, a passion, a painting, for example, and you get so absorbed with it, it's like an infinite amount of time passes in a moment, or an infinite of moments can pass, just as quickly. It's remarkable how our perception of time is distorted by just where our focus is and where our experience is.
When we talk about focus, I always get back to the power of the mind and how it manifests your reality, what your eyes see, and to have, I think that when the journey starts for someone to take on those questions, those universal questions, and take on that journey, I think all of a sudden, this bird's eye view is reached. It's available to the individual, and then they can see that, hey, if I do focus on pain, it does seem like a long time. Or when I do something that fulfills a passion of mine, it really does seem like a second went by and hours go by. So I think the awareness of how the mind works, where we apply our focus, is one of the things people can discover, or ultimately discover, when they take on these journeys when they try to get these answers to the universal questions: who am I? What is my purpose? So yeah, I love how you always you come with the concepts, and not always, but these concepts that you come with always remind me of how powerful the mind really is.
I want to add in too, though. There are two dimensions in which we experience life. One is as an active participant, and the other is as a passive recipient. So when you're active, I would describe us speaking right now as active participants in the process. So we are creating, discussing, and discovering new ideas and being very active in it. And that is our current process. So as we explore this, we're diving deeper into the connectedness that is between everyone. But there is another method, and that is as a passive recipient. And viewers will know what I'm speaking of, and I'm sure you do as well. That's where you're driving and you see a road sign, and you're like, is that sign talking to me? How did it know? that I needed to hear that message right now, or you get a phone call. I remember I'll give you an example. I was walking down the street, and my friend, she turns to me and she said, "I don't know how you managed to be so confident." And I didn't even have a chance to respond. The moment that she asked that question, a woman came up and said to me, "Thank you." She was talking to me. She said, "Thank you for being so beautiful. Just everything about you, you're a beautiful person. Thank you so much." And then she was off. And it was like the timing could not have been any better. It was exact to what the conversation was about. When I was pursuing my degrees, I came across mentors and recognized, hey, these people, they're going to be able to help me. And I acted on it. Then it became an action. As soon as I received the message, it became time for me to act. And I think for people who are pursuing this spiritual life, wanting to connect and deepen their faith, it's really important to listen, because the world, the universe, God is talking to us. There's communication going on all the time. I remember, I think it's probably been at least 10 years for myself. My prayers are really rather simple. I ask for the ability to listen more. I ask for a deeper ability to listen. Because the greater my capacity to listen, I believe the answers are already out there. I believe the whispers being, communicated in various ways. I ask for my eyes to be open to see the messages that are designed for me, for everyone. And then I ask that my mouth is open to share what I see.
Yeah, wow. Those are simple and powerful prayers, and I very much agree with the action involved. After we can listen, it's available, and for those who are pursuing their journeys, and I'm just confirming it to them also. There's an action. There's there's things to do. There's when you get the inspiration, when you get the inspiration. And you act it through. And what you just said, you said it earlier. Now it's time to act. This is part of also the creative process of the manifestation as well. So yeah, absolutely.
And I want to add to that, actually, the addictions and distractions and loss. I believe that a lot of those are caused by our unwillingness to join. we can do whatever we want. We have free will. I distinctly believe that. Actually, I think almost every faith believes in a free will. And so with that idea that I can do what I like, it's when people disconnect. They're saying to themselves, I want to disconnect. I don't want to be connected to anyone else. They start to explore the question, who am I? What's my purpose? I don't want to explore that today. I'm going to see what's on the television. Or what I want to go see what's on YouTube, or I'm going to go enjoy this food, and instead of going out for a walk. I want to, on that note, I want to share with you a remarkable story from this remarkable young woman. She was, I think, 3 years old when she told her mother this. She was talking with her mother about faith and about exploring her spiritual journey, I don't think she was 3, and she was basically saying to her mom, when I met her mom, I was at their wedding. I did the photography for their wedding as a friend, and she said, make sure you tell Justin about listening walks. And I said, what's a listening walk? And this 3-year-old girl came up with the idea. She said, you go out for a walk and you try to listen to what the earth has to say to you. And you listen to the sounds of the birds and the sounds of the trees, and then you listen for the messages beyond those sounds. What else can you hear? God is trying to talk to you if you can just listen. So I went on a couple of these, and I when I remember and when I have the time, I go on a little listening walk. I just go for a walk, and I tune in. And it's remarkable what you hear, how much we have a very We talk about different forms of pollution. Noise pollution is one of them. But when you can listen to the silence, to that stillness that's between the sounds, I believe that's when you start to get those messages. You start to get that communication of divine purpose, what your purpose is. You start to really hear and feel, and you know when it's coming in too. You can really feel it. So I wanted to share that with your viewers, this idea of a listening walk, going out and just taking time to listen, but I also take it to observe, observing the space, try and observe everything that's going on, try and feel the energy, the matter, the life that's around us. Essentially, it takes you into a moment of presence, takes you into a moment of connectedness, and really drawing that energy in and then saying, okay, what do you need me to do right now? I'm ready to be your conduit. What do you need me to do?
That's a great idea. Did you call it a listening walk?
A listening walk, yeah. That's what the girl called it.
Oh, yeah, it's a great idea. And I know for myself, when I go for walks, that's what happens. I think also nature is really great, when we go for walks, to consider, to just immerse yourself in nature, because that's where it comes very clear, the messages. And I spent a lot of time in nature as well, in my past, and it gets to the point where I'll be in a forest or whatever in nature, and it's the communication that's happening is not even in English language. Do you understand what I mean? There's a communication happening between me and nature, and it's not even between nature and I. I'm a part of it at that point. Nature is accepting me in its space at that moment, even the animals. And the communication that's happening it's not in language. It's not in a human language, and it gets like that for me in nature. I just kind of wanted to go there because I did walks in nature. But I love the idea of just even you can even walk in the city, urban, in the cities, and have this listening walk. And like you said, I like how you. I think you must have quoted how the person said it was your own thinking, where you listen between the sounds. I find when we're listening, really, really listening, and that means quieting the mind. So turning your thoughts off, if you can, and even saying that, as soon as they say turning your thoughts off, some viewers might be saying, "Oh, I don't have my thoughts." Oh, that's a thought. And that language that you were talking about, that universal language, where language is not like no English or Spanish or Italian or whatever language is native to the individual. Those are not what is communicated. It's beyond that. It's just not present. Messages. Yeah. It's just not present, and that's something I really notice with myself. And when I do the nature thing, it's pretty amazing. It's such a connectedness that almost feels like home type of thing. It's pretty amazing.
It's interesting. One of the commonalities that I've discovered, it sort of transcends everything, is that the idea of separation, that we're separate from each other, from our world, is an illusion.
Yeah.
And the only truth that we can have in our life is that that connection we have to each other, or if we want, we can be separated. We can push everything away from us, even though we're still a little tied to it. We can do that. And to me, a lot of spiritual discussions end up very heated over the concepts of heaven and hell and an afterlife. But I summarize it very distinctly. We don't know. I mean, there are some people who say they've been and come back, but we really are uncertain on what's after. But what I do know is that for me, I want to join with creation. That would be my heaven, a oneness with everything. And to me, hell would be a complete separation, a complete isolation from all other things, life, consciousness. You're just totally alone. And it's the opposite of
separation. If separation is illusion, then it's complete illusion. But I was laughing because when you mentioned, I was laughing. It kind of tickled because we say that all the time. The idea of separation is an illusion.
There is a phrase I've developed that is my own, and it basically, I use this as my mantra for my whole. When I was going through this quest for what's my purpose, I only had one phrase that came out of it, actually. And the phrase was, all is part of the one, and one is part of the all. I'll repeat that. So all is part of the one, and one is part of the all. In other words, everything is tied together. But it's not just that everything is part of one. The one is also part of everything. In other words, I take the concept of duality, that push doesn't exist without pull. Push and pull occur together. There is a push and a pull. That's not the same as good and evil. Those are relative ideas that people apply to something. What I mean more is we are all connected to each other, and in so being connected, you are an individual and you're also infinite. You are one, but you're also everything, and everything is also in you. So we can actually seek within and find that divine self that within ourselves. And that divinity, that inner divinity, is a part of the greater divinity that we all share.
It's omnipresent.
Yes, it's omnipresent. And ironically, there's this remarkable, if you get a chance, you can research Helen Keller and what she describes what it was like to learn a word for the first time, because she was much older when she learned language. She was blind and deaf. And her first word was water. She learned what water was, and she describes it. She says, learning of the word water was both eye-opening, if you will, like it opened her world, because now she wanted to name everything. But she also said it limited, because now everything had a name, where before it was just an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you said when you're in commune with your divinity, there is no language for it. And I truly believe that there is, that language is our best tool to describing something. But in tying back to our earlier conversation on truth, the moment we try to define something is the moment we've missed the mark. Language is a limited tool. It can only go so far before it's missing the infinite. I mean, how many words would it take to describe that?
Right.
I once remember a conversation with a priest that said God is infinitely describable.
That's perfect too.
and I take that to everything. Everything is infinitely describable. You know, I'm looking at my glasses on the table here, and I could describe them by their dimension. I could also describe them by what they do for me. I could keep going. And to what end would I limit my description?
Right.
We are able to be infinitely describable, and in so doing, it's often best to just experience it, coming back to that sort of life of presence, of action.
Absolutely. It does take, it is action. It is action in the spiritual experience. It's action in the physical experience, in the mental experience, in the heartfelt experience. Mm-hmm. And for the listeners who just tuned in, we're speaking with Justin Teeuwen, and his website is Time Consulting Incorporated. And let's keep going on with this conversation. So
go ahead.
No, I was just trying to kind of segue you back into what you were mm-hmm. expanding on here. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. The book that I just finished a year ago, and we're actually next week is the 1-year anniversary of it. It's about time. The book is essentially my process as I've discovered it in pursuing my purpose. How am I going to contribute? And then what are the common tools and essential elements that tie in to every person's path, whether you want to be a musician or you want to be a scientist or a business person, or you want to be a spiritual guide and teacher or educator, whatever your path is, or you want to be a parent, or you want to be an architect, whatever your purpose is. There are common threads to all of those commonalities, those common links. I remember, just to give an example of a commonality, I was in India. My spiritual journey took me to India. I spent a month there backpacking. I had no plan. I just went sort of where I was guided by interest and by signs. And along my journeys, I remember discovering that inner peace is often discovered by simply not worrying, by having faith that everything will work to where it will work, and just enjoying wherever you're at. And while pursuing that, I came back home, and I was attempting to reconnect with my Christian roots, and I went to church, and I was sitting there, and I heard a scripture from the Bible. So, I read it in an ashram somewhere in India, on the eastern side of the world. Now I'm back on the western side of the world in a church, and I'm looking in the Bible, and there it says, "Therefore do not worry, for if I take care of the birds in the air and the creatures on in the sea, how much more will I take care of you?" Which is from the Gospel of Matthew. So, and I've found it in other religions since, and in philosophical texts, the idea that worrying is toxic. And here we are, manifesting all that negative energy that comes from literally thinking about what you are not able to do, thinking of your limitations instead of thinking of your abilities. So this is
here we
one
are
of
with
the
focus,
first,
right?
Yeah. So this is one of the first things that I provide with people, is helping them open their mind to realizing not only is anything possible, but if you can imagine it, you can make it happen. And the only question is, how can you make it happen? And I firmly believe you can make anything possible. But this leads to one other important concept I wanted to touch on. A very common topic in faith is the idea of purpose, and whether there is a divine purpose to everything happening. We want to extract meaning from a moment. And there's a phrase, a very commonly used phrase, which says everything happens for a reason. And
right.
some people base their faith on that, and I think I used to as well when I was younger. But for me, it evolved. And a quote from my book, and this is all from the third part in manifestation, what we're discussing right now, is the following quote. I say some things happen for a reason, and some reasons happen because of some things.
Absolutely.
So I do believe that some things are from the divine. I've been walking down the street and suddenly a stranger provides a kind word, or you never know the sort of master plan that's going on. But at the same time, when tragedy strikes, I don't believe that the universe intends for us to suffer or to have tragedy in our lives. When someone, when there's an accidental loss of life or injury, or you're robbed, or then you're like, well, what's the purpose in it? Well, to me, when tragedy strikes, if you don't find a divine purpose in it, you can make a divine purpose. So I'll give an example. I mentioned how I was robbed, and they took my coat, my leather. I had a brand new leather coat. I hadn't even worn it yet. I was airing it out in the closet, and on the way out, they'd taken it. And I remember saying to myself, I hope it keeps them warm. That was my wish for them. I hope it keeps them warm. I've never been in a position to steal someone's coat, but I thought to myself, if they need that coat that bad, they can have it. I'll give them the coat. And so I let it go. But 4 months later, I'd worked hard and saved up my money, and I said, I'm going to go buy another coat. I'm going to buy I want to buy that coat if I can. So I go to the store, and it turns out there's one coat left of that exact model in the entire of that store. I mean, in all of North America. And they shipped it to me in my size. And I love this thing, because now whenever I wear it, I'm like, I can make whatever reality I want. It's a reminder of that. So for me, that's the purpose I made out of it. But another example, a little more extreme, is, a young couple who might lose their child to an illness. And that's a tragedy. I don't believe, for example, that there's a divine being that would harm them in that way. However, it happens. We're allowed free will, and things happen, some accidents and whatnot. But when that couple turns around and creates a charity that raises the money to cure that illness, that is creating a reason out of a thing. Something happened to them, and they made a divine purpose out of it and gave back to the world. Rather than being a victim, they decided to become a hero. And for me, that's the greatest challenge of our life, is when we're faced with a circumstance, we have to say to ourselves, what can I do out of this? What can be made out of it? How can I make a purpose out of what's happened? To kind of tie into our earlier conversation, Viktor Frankl, he suffered in Auschwitz in World War II. He was a psychiatrist, and he was put into a concentration camp and was sentenced to Auschwitz near the end of the war. And for him, his life's purpose was he didn't have a name. They took away his name. They took away his degree. They took away his thesis. They took away everything he had. His wife was separated from him. I think she passed away somewhere else. He was alone and had nothing. And he said, they're not going to take my dignity. I'm going to be a dignified person, no matter what happens. That was how he found meaning for himself. He had nothing else to do, and they didn't really give him clothes or food. He said, but I can still maintain my dignity. I don't have to give up. And that was his purpose. He made purpose from the most awful of circumstances. And I think that is one of our greatest challenges, and also one of our greatest joys, is creating our purpose from the events that occur in our lives.
Absolutely. One good thing to do also is, I love how you reflect back on and share stories of synchronicities that happen in your life. I think everybody can think back to a certain synchronicity that happened in their life, or if they were focused on something in their life and it actually happened. It could have happened years later, or it could have happened a month later. But when we when we reflect back in our own lives and we see those experiences occur, those are testaments to our own selves, that how the universe works and how we participate in the whole manifestation process. So yeah, I just wanted to say how I really appreciate, and I love how you share with us your stories on these synchronicities. And it's just proof. Everybody has their proof in their lifetime. You can always think back at least to one uncanny, in quote, coincidence, synchronicity, or one uncanny manifestation that happened just by focus, or by being very passionate about something, and lo and behold, it happens.
One of the common focuses, one of the primary focuses of my work, and I list this in my book, is if our thoughts can shape our world, and our beliefs can be formed by our thoughts, and vice versa. Our thoughts are formed by our beliefs. The language we use to structure them is really important. So I actually coach people all the time on restructuring your language. So, for example, when someone feels a little itchy throat coming on, it's natural to say, I think I'm getting sick. What you're actually saying is, I am sick. You are illness. Yeah. And illness then manifests upon you. And you're like, see, I told you I was getting sick. Yeah. Versus an active one, which says, I am healing. Symptoms are a sign of healing.
Well, I would have to say that, just because we're electromagnetic beings, and, every cell that's in our body has a natural intelligence and is operating already in unity. And then we start communicating, through our personalities to ourselves. That language that we use individually, we can create, bliss, or we can create havoc within our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, our physical bodies. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Justin, about language, and because it is the propeller. And not only does language propel, but it's propelling what you have and what you're beholding within you. So if you're propelling language, with the energy of you,
Mm-hmm.
Well, the universe really has no other option but to respond to what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we live in a really neutral universe that is loving and giving, and it just automatically will give you what you call for.
And I find that what I find most miraculous about it is all of what we've been discussing tonight. I share these thoughts and these stories with everyone I interact with of every walk of life, and I've yet to find someone who's like, no, that's not the way it is. It doesn't matter if they're Christian or Muslim or non-faith. Everyone, like, deep down, we have a spiritual connection. We have this spirituality within us and this desire to be joined with each other and work together. And what people are really interested in, what we tend to focus on, are the results. We tend to focus on the products of our life. How many cars do I have in the driveway? How many children do I have? Or how many this do I have? Or, we look for measurables. And what's important is not the measurables, but the process.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're just coming to a close here, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
We only have a few more minutes to our show. It's been a really fascinating conversation. And for those of you that are, just coming in at the end of our show, we've been speaking with Justin Teeuwen from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And he is an author of a brand new book called, It's About Time. And I just love your acronym of explaining what that actually means. Can you just say that in closing?
Yeah, sure.
What time, the title of your book, It's All About Time, what that really represents to you, and quickly, if you can just give us one message to humanity.
Yeah, sure. So It's About Time is the name of the book, and it stands for Transforming Your Life by Illuminating Your Potential, Manifesting the Reality You Wish, and Evolving into the New You. And it's available on my site, timeconsultinginc.com/it's about time. And my name is Justin Teeuwen. To leave a message to humanity, I would, if you give me a moment, I just want to gather my thoughts on that. I want to make sure I communicate what my heart wants to say.
Wow, Justin is getting ready here. I just want to let you know, folks, if we do tune out, this show will be in the archives, and you can listen in to the ending of his message.
So my message to humanity would be this. Deep within you is an infinite self that's connected to everyone and everything. And if you can open yourself to receiving everyone and sharing who you are with everyone, you'll be able to fulfill that unlimited potential within and realize your personal legend.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on our show today, Justin, and
thank you
sharing
for having me.
Your incredible knowledge and your spiritual practice, living your dream, following, and creating, manifesting what it is that you want to experience in your world. I think it's just phenomenal, and we really stand united. And, we're here to support spiritually gifted or guided individuals living spiritually purposed lives, and hopefully that in the future we can have you back on again, so you can share your great wisdom.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful show, and I thank you for having me.
Justin, thank you for being on our show once more, and for all the listeners, thank you for being here tonight. And you can always re-listen to it in the archives. Have a wonderful evening. and it's such a great way of connecting with others too.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second.
One moment. I can edit that out. Are you there, Justin? Hello? Can you hear me, Breedy? Hello?